Hello, everyone. I am Bonnie Barnes, one of the co-founders of the Daisy Foundation, and I'd like to welcome you all to the third webinar in our three-webinar series for this year that the Daisy Foundation and Kirby Bates are putting on to talk about advancing compassionate leadership. And I'm especially looking forward to today's conversation because our panel is going to explore something that I have to admit I'm not familiar with. It's called Future Smart Skills. But before our panel explains what that means and how it impacts compassionate leadership, let's start with introductions. And Peggy, would you like to lead us off?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. My name is Peggy Loughery, and I'm one of the Vice Presidents for Executive Search Services here at Kirby Bates Associates.
Thank you, Peggy. Welcome. And Dennis, please tell our audience a little about yourself.
Hi, I'm Dennis Kain. I'm a Senior Vice President with Kirby Bates Associates. As an executive search consultant and past hospital CEO, my job is to find outstanding C-suite leaders in health systems and in health-related companies.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And Melissa, I know you barely need an introduction, but please tell us about yourself. And while you're at it, why don't you start us off by explaining what future smart skills are?
Hi, everybody. This is Melissa Fitzpatrick joining you from beautiful Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I am lucky to work with Peggy and Dennis every day as the president of Kirby Bates Associates. We do executive search, interim leadership, and provide advisory services to clients all over the country as you try to take good care of patients with our leadership skills that we provide. So I am a past president of the American Association of Critical Care Nurses and former chief nurse at Duke. And I'm currently on the board at UNC Rex Healthcare here in North Carolina. So our group that comes to you today has a lot of healthcare experience. And we are also a beloved and longstanding partner of the Daisy Foundation. So very, very proud to join Bonnie here today. So this whole concept of future smart skills, it can mean a lot of different things to different people. The context that we're going to use today is what was described by Canton back in 2015 and what has been elaborated upon by our colleague, Executive Vice President for Interim Leadership and Executive Advisory Services, Colleen Chapp, here with us at Kirby Bates. When this concept of future smart thinking, future smart leadership was described, it was really describing an ability of a leader to pay attention to emerging concepts, signals, early warnings, things that are happening out in the future that we can then contemplate, study, and respond to address issues that we're facing today. It's paying attention to those signals that we see all around us, whether in our environments of care, whether in our communities, whether in data and evidence that we're collecting, that we can try to approach in a way that we can solve problems today. So future smart leaders, they really understand these possible scenarios that are out there in the future and try to use those scenarios to better approach problem solving today. So you're probably doing this every single day in your work. You just might not have called it this in the past. So we want to use future smart thinking with you today to think about some of those examples that you use every day in your work and how to build upon them to create compassionate, effective leadership into the future.
Oh, that's great, Melissa. Thank you. And I think it would help us understand this concept even further if each of you could talk about examples of how you apply it yourselves, an experience from maybe from your past where you've applied future smart thinking to help you prepare your organization for the future. And Peggy, let's start with you.
Absolutely. Healthcare today is extremely complicated, as you all know, by COVID. The last year and a half has been absolutely unprecedented and has many implications. The circumstances leaders are dealing with today, such as staff resigning to travel, early retirements, the vaccination mandate, all have implications for tomorrow and our future. So future smart thinking is absolutely necessary. We must continue to provide the resources that the staff need to provide quality patient care. Organizations are getting very creative, though. For example, I recently spoke with a client who's bringing in retired clinical nurses who may not want to or be able to work a 40-hour work week, but they are working per diem and really helping to precept and train new nurses and really transferring that knowledge that they've gained over the years.
Oh, that is, I'm so glad to hear that, because obviously we need that kind of wisdom.
We do.
leaving our hospital and healthcare buildings. Melissa, can you give some examples of how you use future smart skills in your work and leadership?
I can. I actually use future smart thinking every single day without almost even thinking that I do. I often joke that my crystal ball has been broken for a long time, but in fact, we do need to have that vision and sort of be 3 and 4 steps ahead of our current state so that we can be planning effectively for our future, not only for our patients and their families, but for our teams and for our environments of care. And so I think the ability for leaders to be working on the solutions, not just in the solutions, is very important today from a future smart perspective. So often, all of us, no matter what our roles are, we're so knee deep in the day-to-day, putting out fires, that it's hard sometimes to step back and kind of look up and look out and see what might be on the horizon. And that's really what future smart leadership requires. It's the ability to step out of our current state, think about new scenarios, new possibilities, new approaches, new team members, new partners, and then pull all those pieces together to apply them to today's situation.
Sounds like you all need to be really good chess players too, huh?
That's a good part. That's right. Right.
Good analogy.
Dennis, how about you? Would you like to weigh in, please?
Sure. Back in the day when I was leading a hospital, it became clear to me that in the wakes of acts of violence that were beginning to take place in a variety of workplaces, including the postal service operations, the grocery stores, and other locations, that a proactive strategy was needed to not only protect hospital staff, but also to have services readily available to provide help to the staff post-event. I was particularly concerned about the emergency department, and they might encounter an event that, should one occur, that the staff would then need counseling. So we arranged for a psychologist who was well known in the region for providing post-traumatic workplace counseling to visit with the emergency department and meet the staff, just in case. The arrangement received coverage in the local newspaper, and ironically, it was a shooting event that subsequently took place at that newspaper, which first required the services of that very same psychologist.
Wow. Well, it hurts my heart to think that you had to think that way, but I know you did, and I know more and more healthcare leaders have had to deal with situations like that. And clearly, future smart leadership is taking on an application that is just required at this point. And Melissa, as someone who leads an organization now and has served as CNO in the past and leaders of other great organizations, how do you think that organizations simultaneously encourage compassionate leadership? Tie all this together for us.
Well, I think so many times it might feel like we have competing priorities or competing demands. But my belief, and you can ask my team members if I live and breathe this, I hope I do, I believe that the compassionate element of healthcare delivery is absolutely as important an element as anything else. Our financial metrics, our satisfaction metrics, our access metrics, anything that we look at in healthcare. For me, the reason that we went into healthcare was to provide service. For many of you listening today, to lay hands on, but to help make people's lives better. So the compassionate element of leadership, I believe, has never been more important than it is today. And we can build this compassionate muscle. We can strengthen it every day with each other by role modeling compassionate principles, by mentoring others in empathy and compassionate decision making, and by really being those leaders who consider, how does this decision affect those that I serve? How does what I choose today make a difference in someone's life, in the solvency of our company, in my case, or in our organization? How do we make all of those pieces weigh in and balance them out? That's what leadership is about today. Future smart leadership, for sure, is not only looking into that crystal ball, but it's making those decisions today that are going to be of the greatest good for the greatest number. I believe that takes an inordinate amount of compassion to walk in each other's shoes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I can say that your personal sense and dedication to compassionate care, Melissa, and certainly Kirby Bates' execution of compassionate leadership is one of the reasons why you are such a special partner for the Daisy Foundation, because we obviously share a dedication to compassionate patient care. Dennis, how would you describe this?
Well, it's interesting. Folks tend to work and are motivated to work for leaders if they believe that leader cares about him or her. It's that simple. When you're talking about providing care to the patient, there's already a book out there that documents this. A friend of mine, Dr. Mazzarelli, who leads a hospital in New Jersey, wrote a book called Compassionomics. And basically, they've done the study to determine that compassionate care actually improves outcomes. So it's out there.
That is quite a book. If anybody hasn't read it, I'd highly recommend it, because for those of us who are such fervent proponents of compassion in healthcare, it provides all the evidence and data that you need to demonstrate why compassion really serves patient care well, and it serves the well-being of healthcare providers and workers as well. It's an excellent book. In fact, I just heard the author interviewed on a podcast recently, and hearing how he got to this place was fascinating. So I thank you for bringing that up. Peggy, what would you like to contribute to this?
So I'd say, to me, one of the things that I've learned about compassionate care in my time here at Kirby Bates was actually, Bonnie, following you and going into some of the organizations and hearing the stories of the Daisy Foundation winners who provided compassionate care to patients, right? So nurses tend to be compassionate, we just do. But I have to tell you, my example is really from an anesthesiologist that I interviewed recently. I was speaking to him as a key stakeholder to fill one of the nursing director positions in Peri-Op, and big, large academic medical center. And he talked about compassionate care, but it was compassionate care towards the staff and how we have to start providing compassionate care to one another as staff in healthcare so that people don't continue to leave the healthcare profession, right? So he just talked about, what can we do? We need to use that future smart thinking of looking ahead to the future. How can we be more compassionate to our staff? How can we meet them where they are? The staff have been through a lot over the last year and a half. So he talked about being a servant leader, really serving our staff and what their needs are, being visible to the staff, actually listening to their ideas, their solutions. They have the best solutions possible, right? They're the ones doing the work. Providing creative, flexible scheduling was another thing that we talked about, because they were saying how much they're struggling in the OR to get people, scheduled for their staff and for their cases. And then making staff aware of the resources that are available to them, such as employee assistance programs. I mean, all of the organizations have them, and really how many people take advantage of those things that are available to them. So it was just so nice to hear a physician talk about the compassionate care that nurses provide, but then how can we provide it to one another?
Wow, he must be very inspiring and an inspiring person to work with and around every day. I can only imagine. I know that you can hire skills, but how do you hire someone who has this kind of vision and this kind of empathy for other people? And I think the pandemic has raised and made obvious so many problems in healthcare, and forgive me as an outsider for saying this, but so many problems that our healthcare workers need to have tended to that, well, probably been going on a long, long time, but now is the time that we're really seeing action, and we're very excited to know that those problems are going to get solved. And I look at Kirby Bates Associates as really expert in helping people build their careers. I wish when I was working in my other life that there was a Kirby Bates to guide my career along, because I know I would have been even more successful. So I have to ask, as compassionate leaders, and you think about advancing careers, how do you suggest people build a portfolio so they're really ready for the next opportunity and they can be thinking about their futures? What tips can you provide our audience? Dennis, why don't you start this time?
Okay, well, it may seem a little bizarre be talking about how to take on stretch assignments and other things as we've just gone through the pandemic and everybody has been stretched for the last 2 years. However, this may be the time to be open-minded about volunteering for a task force or a team that focuses on something beyond your current scope. This may be that moment. It could be leading an initiative related to the implementation of your clinical information system or some new program that's about to come out. The stretch assignment, by definition, is there a leadership vacancy that you could offer to cover for a while to expand your scope? I think there's been a lot of stretch assignments going on the last 2 years anyway. But if you're looking to expand that portfolio, as you mentioned, this would be that opportunity. If you previously worked in med-surg, could you offer to move over to critical care or even women and children's? Or you could work on a performance improvement project and interact with your interdisciplinary colleagues, if you will, outside of nursing for something that is some unique task that you bring to the table. The key is that you not only get the exposure beyond your normal day-to-day, but you're also part of something as you accomplish and implement that you can talk about in much more broader terms than you can just from your day-to-day. So be open-minded. Don't be afraid to take a chance. Surround yourself with some good advisors and take some risk.
Wow. It's the time to do it. I know. Not easy, though. And going outside your comfort zone certainly takes courage. And if there's one thing that nurses have a lot of and have proven this over the last couple of years, boy, it is courage. So I'd love to hear from you all. What other qualities do nurse leaders have in common that have helped them successfully develop and advance their careers? And Peggy, why don't we start with you?
Absolutely. If I could say one word, I would say it's passion. They certainly have a passion for the profession of nursing. They have a passion and a commitment to continued professional development, whether that's formal education, going back to school for their master's or their doctorate, or whether that is informal education. And as Dennis said, taking on projects. Interdisciplinary collaboration is really a key to people's success these days. Nursing does not work on an island anymore, right? We are all part of a very big interdisciplinary team now. So I really would say that people that have been successful really have that drive. They have that drive to succeed, but they have that passion for doing the right thing. And as Dennis said, I said, be open to change. Change is critical, right? There's one thing that's guaranteed in healthcare right now, it's change. We're going to have to change a lot of things over the next couple of years. And it's going to take future more smart skills, but it's also going to take a lot of change. So be open to that change. Take a chance.
Yeah, well, I know that all of you and nurses galore are supporting each other as you go through this incredible transformation that healthcare is requiring. You mentioned something about a commitment to professional development, Peggy, and I just wanted to comment that last night I listened to Howard Catton, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the ICN, International Council of Nursing. He was speaking from a global perspective about, of course, we all need to worry about the new nurses that are coming into the profession, but how important ongoing professional development is, particularly because of the changes you're describing, and that this needs to be a global commitment to advancing professional practice. Melissa, what do you think?
It's so funny you said that, because I was just thinking, Peggy took mine about passion, but I would like to say that for the future, every one of us, no matter what phase you're at in your career, whether you're a novice, whether you're an expert, I find that the best leaders, those who are best prepared, have that resilience that comes with lifelong learning, that curiosity to figure out things in new ways, to expose themselves to new methods, new reading. My best examples over a very long career of exquisite leaders and teammates and partners have been those that really were always trying to find a solution, weren't just yakking about what the problem is. Everybody knew what the problem was, but we're really solution oriented and trying to use all of the resources at their disposal to figure something out and to try it. Now you have to have that environment in which it's safe to do that, to take a chance, to try something new. But I can go way back in the day when I went to my chief nurse as a very young critical care nurse and said, I want to be your first ever critical care clinical nurse specialist. And she said, write it up, let's try it. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. And I've tried to use that mindset in all of my leadership roles. Let's try it. Let's put our ideas together. Let's take some risks. Let's keep learning and experiencing new ways of doing things and keep moving forward. But that takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of resilience. It does take courage and passion, but just to keep moving, just keep moving, keep moving. Let's keep moving forward to solve these incredibly difficult issues we've got to solve.
So you've addressed the innovation that is innate in nurses, right? Yeah. And also the environment. And I know in your role at the American Association of Critical Care Nurses, you all were so ahead of the curve on a healthy work environment and the standards for a healthy work environment. And in that environment, there needs to be the opportunity to make mistakes, to try things that don't work and go do something else. And isn't that the scientific method anyway in experimentation, right? That's what it's all about. Exactly. I love that perspective, but I also know how important any culture needs to be in an organization to try things. If they don't work, you move on. Dennis, let's turn to you.
Well, if you can keep your head while others around you are losing theirs, the key is to keep calm in a storm. Always stay calm. Never, never lose your temper. People will remember for 20 years when someone lost their temper. And I truly believe that great leaders are also great listeners. Learn how to effectively listen. I went to a class a long time ago on skills to learn to more effectively listen, and I've applied them for quite some time. And there are ways to do it. So you focus. When you're talking to someone, you want that person to listen to you. The same thing applies as a leader. You have to know how to listen and take in what's being said to you.
Well, and I hear, Dennis, that you are famous for keeping calm in a storm. So I'm sure you're a
He
great
sure is. He sure is, Bonnie.
Yes.
We can all attest to that.
He is our calm in the storm.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm interested to know how you use future SMART skills to assure a healthy pipeline of compassionate leaders. It is such a concern that we're seeing so many wonderful nurses retiring right now, and God bless them, I certainly understand it. But we need to ensure that the next generation is ready to step into a leadership role. And I know you all have some great advice on how to be ready for that. Dennis, why don't we start with you this time?
Well, it's going to sound very simple, but it has always been, and it remains, the responsibility of all leaders, all of them, to identify and develop the next generation of leaders. That is just incumbent. It's a responsibility of any leader that we need to continue to keep our eyes open and help develop others to step up.
I love that. And it's, I know sometimes it can be hard to do. I once worked with someone who said, I know you want my job and I want you to have my job. I just don't want you to have it when I'm in it. I'll never forget that comment. But not to say that succession planning is not an imperative. It is an imperative of each of us as leaders. Peggy, what would you like to add?
Absolutely. I spoke to a candidate the other day I was so proud of. She said, I have 3 people deep waiting to take my job. And I thought, wow, you have done a wonderful, wonderful job of succession planning. But I think there's a couple ways. We obviously need to have a formal structure in place for succession planning. So CNOs, it's great to have an ACNO or a couple directors that you mentor as part of your succession plan. So it's critical to have that level at the higher level. But don't forget about that unit level. Nurse managers are very difficult to recruit. Nationally, we can get people to usually relocate for director level, ACNO, CNO, but nurse managers are generally at a younger stage of their life, sometimes have family obligations that do not allow them to relocate. So those nurse manager positions, when they become vacant, very critical that we have some kind of structure in place for them. So I would say if you don't have them, create an assistant nurse manager position or a charge nurse without an assignment position, somebody that can be a pipeline for that nurse manager. One organization I talked to recently, probably followed in Melissa's footsteps, and did have a clinical nurse specialist on the unit who really served as that clinical expert, but also learned the management skills while they've served in that role. So they have stepped into those positions when the nurse managers have become vacant. So make sure that at all levels of the organization, very important to have it, but have it at all levels.
Well, that makes an awful lot of sense, Peggy, and I understand. We're working right now at DAISY on an initiative in partnership with AONL, the American Organization for Nursing Leadership, on the role of nurse managers and how do we elevate and celebrate what I understand is the toughest job in the building. So I'm so glad you referred to having a pipeline for nurse managers, because we need to do everything we can to support them and frankly give them the break they need from this 27 responsibility they have. Melissa, what would you advise?
You've covered a lot of it. One of the things that strikes me though is this takes committed, dedicated work. This is not a transition, whether it's succession planning or developing that organizational culture that just happens by osmosis. It takes time and dedication and resources to make this happen. I think it does start with everybody role modeling these behaviors and attributes that we want to see. You may hire for them at the beginning, then your work's not done. We have to make sure that they continue to be demonstrated every day, every encounter, every engagement, so that we continue to strengthen the organizational cultures in which we work. You know, there's nothing I laugh at more, not in a ha-ha way, but in a way, when you walk into these beautiful organizations and they've got the mission statements all laminated all over the lobby, and oh, isn't this a beautiful place? And then you get to the unit level, and the micro cultures can be absolutely so toxic that how does that happen? That's not where you retain the best and the brightest. So I, for one, believe the hardest work in healthcare is this frontline bedside nurse. Close second is the nurse manager. So how do we support them having that cultural strength, building that sense of listening, compassion, all the things we're talking about, so that they feel supported to keep coming back every day. That takes role modeling, mentoring, and it takes these organizational leaders at all levels. Every nurse is a leader. How do we have the formal leadership make sure that they're role modeling that and expecting it? So when we're evaluating performance, are we evaluating for these skills, compassion, good listening, good teamwork, good communication, empathy? Are we having zero tolerance for some of these non-compassionate behaviors? You know, why is it that we're still reading in all of our journals about lateral violence? Why are we still reading in our profession about the toxic behaviors that still exist? We've been talking about this since City was up, right? Why? We have got to not just say, oh, we shouldn't have that. We've got to take action. That's why I'm so proud of the work that AACN has done in the healthy work environment space, because we've really put tangible, tactical, measurable elements in place so that each of you can assess your unit, your shift, your department, your organization against some of these key parameters for compassion and for health in the workplace. It's never been more important than it is today.
Oh, so beautifully said, Melissa. Thank you so much. And I think we're going to wrap it up now. And I really want to thank each and every one of you, Melissa Fitzpatrick, Peggy Loughery, and Dennis Kain, and all of you at Kirby Bates Associates. This has been a wonderful, inspiring half hour. And I know you could talk at greater length about how to apply future smart leadership, future smart skills, and all the other smart skills it takes to be a compassionate and successful leader in such a challenging time. I hope if any of our listeners have questions, they will reach out to you directly. I know that you'll have a wonderful dialogue with any one of you if you do. And finally, from all of us at the DAISY Foundation and from Kirby Bates, may I wish all of you in our audience a very healthy, happy holiday season. We look forward to being with you all next year and hope that we get to do this again. Thank you so much. So long.